After giving his 2 cents at the White House, Mike Duggan returns to Detroit to try to steer the city through the pandemic. We'll talk with the mayor about the challenges of the vaccine and the other pandemic, the mental health struggles of young people after a year of COVID. Today is Sunday, February 21st, 2021, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint on this February 21st, which means happy birthday, Mom. I'm just sorry we're not there to celebrate with you. If your parents live far away, as mine do, then your story is likely like my family's. It's been more than a year since I've been able to get together with my folks. Tomorrow, they get their second vaccine, so that's a big step in the right direction. But I have no idea when I'll be getting vaccinated, and until then, me, you, all of us just keep operating in a netherworld of declining cases and deaths, great, but also of virus mutations and uncertainty about what the vaccine really means for our behaviors and best practices. The vaccine rollout was a confusing mess. No real surprise given the size of the task. It is getting a bit smoother, though more recent bumps over supply. We do seem to be finding better ideas, like Macomb County teaming up with Smart to make sure seniors can get to their vaccine appointments. And those who've been through the TCF vaccine drill in Detroit tell me it is impressively efficient. But we still have the reality of supply and demand, which are currently mismatched. Ahead this morning, we're going to talk with Mayor Duggan about how it's going and what he wants to improve. We'll also talk about his meetings at the White House aimed at getting America up and running again. We're also going to talk about a pandemic problem for which there is no vaccine. Studies are bringing to light something that many parents could have told you without a study, and that is that our young people are struggling. Between the forced isolation and the remote learning that means staring at a computer for hours on end, our teenagers are facing mental health struggles that we may be underestimating to a dangerous degree. We'll talk about that too today on Flashpoint. It was about a week ago that Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan headed to the White House to take part in conversations about COVID relief response and about reopening the economy, while at the same time continuing to tamp down the pandemic, which of course has been the mayor's preoccupation now for almost a year. Good to have Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan back with us again on Flashpoint. Mr. Mayor, I really appreciate the time. I want to start with, let's talk about vaccines to begin with. I have talked to a number of people who've been through the TCF process. They've been very impressed with how smoothly it runs. But the reality is we just don't have enough of the stuff. What's your outlook right now, given the struggles of getting a hold of the vaccine?
Well, I think President Biden and Jeff Zients, who's running it, are just doing a great job. And we're seeing the vaccine supply slowly increase every week. And they're saying by April, we will be in a really good place. So right now, everybody just has to prioritize those who are most at risk. And I think it's being done as well as it can be done.
You know, I know that in the end we'll have learned a lot about, and hopefully we don't have to go through all this again, but for future efforts like this, there's a lot of confusion, I think, that still exists among Michiganders. A little confusing that Detroit, of course, has its own health department, so it's handling its own. Other people need to go through a county. Other people are then directed to go through their health care provider. Is there anything we can do to alleviate the confusion that a lot of people have about where they're supposed to go?
You know, my mother is down in Florida, and if you think there's confusion in Michigan, you should try that. You've had seniors sit out on chairs overnight waiting in line. They're dialing to the different pharmacies and healthcare systems for days on end until they get through. And so it's a challenge, but I don't really focus on the rest of the state. I focus on Detroit. And Detroit, it's simple. You dial one telephone number, you'll get through to somebody within a matter of a few minutes, and if you're eligible, we'll book you and you'll be in a couple of days. And I can only control what we have in the city. In the suburbs, the hospital systems have actually done a very good job of getting people vaccinated, and the vaccination rate in the suburbs is higher than in Detroit because those hospital systems were so successful. And we're just trying to narrow that gap by what I think is a very efficient operation at TCF.
What are you hearing about? We've talked a lot about the pushback from some people, especially in Detroit, who don't trust the healthcare system, who don't trust the vaccine. What are you hearing so far about the effectiveness of the message?
Well, right now, we can't get, nor can anybody else, vaccinate everybody who wants the vaccine. So there's going to come a point at which those who are hesitant, it's going to be an issue. But right now, if you've seen it, people are lined up to get the vaccine, and we have plenty of willing. What I'm hearing from lots of folks was, I wanted to see other people take it first. I wanted to be sure, because there's so much conflicting information. Now, you're heading toward 2 million vaccines in Michigan and no sign of any significant problems. And so I think every week that goes by, there's a little less hesitancy, a little more acceptance. And I think at this point, I don't think the people want to hear any more from politicians or from doctors. They want to know their sister, their neighbor, their coworker got it. It was no problem. Now they're safe. They're going to get their lives back. And that's really the biggest thing. If you want to be able to go out without masks, you want to be able to go out to stores and restaurants, you want to go back to work, we got to get vaccinated. And, I think we're overcoming the hesitancy a day at a time.
As we try to get stores and restaurants open again, can you calculate the damage that the pandemic has done to the city of Detroit to a financial degree? The casinos, the sports venues, restaurants, retail, on and on and on.
Well, I just tell you from a human standpoint, which is really my focus, when the city of Detroit went into bankruptcy, we had 21% unemployment. We had gotten it down to 7% with all the factories and jobs that came back into the city. Took us 7 years to get from 21% to 7%. Now we're back up to 20%. 1 out of 5 people in this city is not working today. And a lot of those folks are in their houses or apartments. They aren't able to pay rent because they're not working. They're afraid they're going to lose their housing when the landlord-tenant courts open up at 36th District Court. The human impact has been enormous. And we've done a lot of things with a lot of business support, a whole lot of tenant support to keep people from being evicted. And we've got a lot of programs right now to keep that going. But that's the real cost.
The governor clearly is not moving fast enough for a lot of people. We've got restaurateurs now filing lawsuits. We've got parents protesting school and sports decisions. Has the governor been moving fast enough for you?
Somebody should go, if you have any doubt, and look at the New York Times national COVID map. And if you go back about 4 months, Michigan was bright red, one of the highest COVID rates in America. Today, we are light yellow, one of the lowest rates. Unlike California, unlike New Mexico, unlike a lot of other parts of the country, what the governor has done has taken us from one of the highest infection rates in America to one of the lowest infection rates in America. And I'm really proud that Detroit has been one of the lowest infection rates in the state of Michigan. There's been a lot of pain involved, but I don't know how you begin to look at what's happened in this country and not say Gretchen Whitmer hasn't done a great job.
Well, Detroit was one of the first so badly hit in the U.S., and that takes me to, I want to ask you a little bit about nursing homes. We're watching this investigation play out in New York. Now, New York finally changed its policy and stopped putting COVID-positive people into nursing homes long before Michigan made the decision to stop doing that. Are you concerned? And that ended up being a lot of lives lost in the city of Detroit. Dana Nessel refused to investigate what happened at the nursing homes because she said it was somehow political. If I've lost a loved one in a nursing home, I'm not sure that feels political to me. Have we dug deep enough into what happened in Michigan nursing homes and the decision making around it?
Yeah, there is a lot of emotion. It turned out not to be an issue in Detroit. But let's go back to what happened in the nursing homes. Is the early guidance that everybody got from the CDC was if you didn't have symptoms, you weren't contagious. That was the history from SARS. And so what happened in the nursing homes at the beginning was the nursing home operators were separating those with symptoms from those without symptoms. They thought, based on what the CDC was doing, they were doing the right thing. In Detroit, we were the first city in the country that went in and tested everybody in a nursing home because we got the Abbott 15-minute test first. If you do the standard test where you get results back 4 or 5 days later, it doesn't mean anything in a nursing home because 4 or 5 days later, a whole different group of people are contagious. So in the city of Detroit, we went through with the Abbott 15-minute test, tested everybody. We found out half the infectious people didn't have symptoms. We separated them. And so in Detroit, you saw the nursing home deaths decline very rapidly. But the spread in the nursing homes didn't come because somebody who recovered in the hospital came home. The spread in the nursing homes happened because asymptomatic people in those nursing homes were spreading it, and the CDC was telling you that spread couldn't occur. So I don't know how somebody goes back and investigates. I think Governor Cuomo was ill-served by not just providing the numbers up front. I think that was his biggest issue. But again, I don't need to get into other folks' situations. Detroit was the first that tested every single nursing home resident, and that's why you saw our death rate drop so dramatically last April.
That speaks to part of it. Clearly, we were putting some COVID-positive people in nursing homes, trying to keep them separated within those nursing homes, but it also speaks to the fact that we don't really have a place between a hospital and your home to convalesce when you need sort of half care. I want to ask you quickly before we run out of time about what's the snowstorm that we just had. I believe you got you've been promising everybody you'd get the streets plowed fully, and that if they didn't, you wanted to hear about it. I believe you ended up getting about 85% of the streets cleared when you wanted to, and you have never struck anybody as an 85% kind of guy. So what do you do now?
Well, by now we are in very good shape, but we have a contract, and you have 7 contractors. And of course, the city does a great job on the main streets. Our DPW, I thought, was just outstanding working the 12-hour shifts. But for the 1 or 2 times a year, you've got to do 1,800 miles of road. You don't want to have the city buy tens of millions of dollars of equipment. It makes much more sense to contract with private companies when that happens. And you don't know till the first snow of the year how each company performs. The great majority of them did absolutely great. But we set up a system where if they missed your street, you could contact us through the Improved Detroit app or a telephone number, and we either got the contractor back out or the city crews came back out. And we got 85% done in the first pass, and we've gone back through every single block by block, through every complaint to make sure it all gets done.
Lastly, Mr. Mayor, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about crime in some time. Early on in the pandemic, crime went down. It was sort of understandable. People were following the rules, staying in. We come to see, though, lately a rise in violent crime in Detroit. The FBI has us back up at the very top of the list. What's your take on what's happening with violent crime in Detroit?
Well, it's not just lately. It's really been since May or June. And if you look at what's happened, robberies are down, burglaries are down, carjackings are down, shootings are way up. And I've talked to mayors in Chicago, Atlanta, New Orleans. We've seen the same dynamic all over the country. People have been locked in place. They have way too many guns, and every conflict is turning into violence. And I've been talking to the U.S. Attorney's Office. We're talking to the chief. We have a spike in gun violence that is completely unacceptable, and we're going to be focused on that. And so we haven't risen as high as some cities, but it's just not an acceptable situation, and something I'm going to be spending a lot of time on.
Mr. Mayor, we haven't been able to have you on the program for quite some time. It's good to catch up with you again. Thanks for the time, and we'll talk to you again soon, I hope.
Good to see you, Devin.
You bet. Mayor Mike Duggan. We come back. The struggles the pandemic is visiting on our young people. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.
Visit GollingBloomfield.com and lease or buy your next vehicle online. Only at Golling Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Bloomfield Hills. During the President's Day event, hit the road in the 2021 Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cab 4x4 for just $299 a month employee, $359 friends and family. Or lease this 2021 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab 4x4, now only $359 a month employee, $399 friends and family. You search, you request, we deliver to your home or office. Shop GollingBloomfield.com. Golling Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Bloomfield Hills.
Gardner White welcomes Stearns & Foster, America's handcrafted mattress collection. Save up to $800 on the largest selection of Stearns & Foster mattresses in Detroit. In stock every day with free same-day delivery. Save and sleep on a Stearns & Foster Queen for as low as $14 a month with a free TV or MasterCard. When we say yes to credit, with 0% financing up to 60 months. Shop and save on the Stearns & Foster collection today at Gardner White, Detroit's #1 mattress store.
Always there for you. Come experience the Gowling difference at Gowling Alfa Romeo of Birmingham.
Shop with us online at alfaromeoofbirmingham.com for incredible offers from the comfort and safety of your home. Right now, take home the 2021 Alfa Romeo Giulia with all-wheel drive for just $309 a month, sign and drive. Or lease the 2021 Alfa Romeo Stelvio with all-wheel drive for only $349 a month, sign and drive. Don't wait. Visit alfaromeoofbirmingham.com today.
Black history is American history.
So to celebrate Black History Month, we're taking you to the places where it happened. Monday morning at 6:30, our city played a vital role in the fight against slavery.
Detroit is considered the last stop on the Underground Railroad.
Now, hear the story of the local heroes and the Underground Railroad and the lives they saved.
Count on Local 4 News today
to bring those historic moments to you.
Welcome back. From pretty much the beginning, we've wondered about the toll the pandemic has been taking on all of us from a mental health standpoint. Well, studies are now making clear what many feared, that it is having a deep and damaging impact on many teenagers. Let's talk about that with two health professionals. Pediatrician Dr. Lynn Smitherman is with us from Wayne State University, and Mary Beth Garvey, a family therapist from Grosse Pointe. Mary Beth doesn't look old enough for me to say I've known her forever, but I've known her forever. And in fact, Mary Beth, let me start with you because I can remember just a couple of weeks into this thing this past year, you were telling me that you were starting to get swamped with people who needed to talk to you, young people who needed to talk to you, and that was a long time ago. I don't imagine it's gotten any better.
No, Devin, I don't think it has become much better. One of the things that we're seeing in mental health is that adolescents really are facing a crisis. We're seeing the numbers in anxiety disorders going up and depressive disorders. There's an uptick in substance abuse. They're much more isolated than they've been historically. And even across the country, we're finding that mental health workers can't keep up with demands. Yeah. So they are really struggling. And when you think of where they are developmentally, it makes a lot of sense because this is a time that adolescents are supposed to be pursuing novel experiences and expanding their autonomy. And they're absolutely hardwired for connection right now, especially with their peers. And so the fallout for them is significant. Yeah.
Dr. Smitherman, you recently wrote an article about what you're seeing. Describe what you've seen so far.
Well, yes, the same type of thing with our adolescents. Unfortunately, adolescents are social beings. Yeah. And when you disrupt their ability to do that, it's just very, very difficult for them, especially when their friends that graduated from high school, 2 or 3 years ago had all the trappings that went along with it, the prom and all the fun things and the sports activities and that type of thing. And then, when they're not able to do that, it weighs pretty heavily, not only on themselves as individuals, but also, there's concern about, their family members, especially those that might be older, those that might be more susceptible to COVID-19 and all of the sequelae, the medical sequelae that go along with it. So that's a heavy burden, unfortunately, that our teenagers are bearing right now. We are seeing more significant, especially in the teenagers of color and minority populations. Unfortunately, they're getting hit a little bit harder with this, with everything else that's going on in their lives. Yeah.
Mary Beth, it's interesting. When you're a teenager, you, of course, think, because we were all this way, you think that this is going to be the best time of your life. And if you're wasting any portion of that time, it is a disaster. So the pressure to be living your best life when you're young is kind of enormous, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think teenagers understand intellectually that this is a pause and that we will get back to some type of normal. But I think one of the most important things that we can do as parents, and this sounds really simple, but it's hard to execute on, is just really validate what their hardships are right now. Because I think as parents, we have that desire to move them to gratitude or optimism, or to help them find some type of meaning in all these difficulties. It's so often you hear parents tell their kids, like, well, so and so has it worse, or it could be more of a struggle. And all of that is true, but I don't think we give our kids the opportunity to really recover and tap into their resilience until we just first start seeing and hearing them and really validating all the loss and the disruption that they've dealt with. And it's been significant.
And Dr. Smitherman, that's not easy right now for a lot of parents, because a lot of adults right now are kind of on their last nerve too. The pandemic is having an impact on all of us.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Especially if you have some parents that are trying to work from home and monitor their children as they're learning online. That's a huge issue. And then just being, kind of sequestered together for long periods of time. I think sometimes school was a relief for some parents, or, going to work was a relief for some parents. The family had a chance to kind of get out into the world and then come back again and reconnect. And unfortunately, when you're connected all day, every single day, that can be a little stressful for everybody.
Because sequestered is a nice clinical way of maybe saying trapped is the way that I think some people probably feel about it. Yeah. Mary Beth, the other thing, though, that I thought was really interesting is about this when it started was I thought this is going to be really hard for a lot of kids. And then I thought, you know what? For some young people, the ones who are bullied at school, the ones who dread going to school every day, was there going to be an upside to this for them? Has that been the case? Has this been good for anybody?
Yeah, sure. I think there's some kids, especially if there's been any experiences like you've just mentioned or social anxiety, there is a little bit of relief stepping out of the school system. But I do think that's been short-lived, that while initially there was some benefit to it, it's a struggle to be at home all the time, no matter how supportive your parents are, no matter what they do to keep things manageable. And adolescents are having a hard time to self-regulating right now, because one of the things they're really retreating to or withdrawing to is their phone and social media. Yeah. And of course, that gives them a very curated view of how everybody else is coping. So I still think there's those struggles around anxiety and some of the social issues, although there may be a little bit of relief.
And Lynn, this stress is very bad for our health. What do you think is the long-term impact, not just on our teenagers, but on all of us? What has this last year done to our own medical outlooks?
Well, it'll be interesting to see. We have what's called adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress that has been studied for several years now. And it's been shown that individuals with significant toxic stress, even in childhood, can perpetuate through adulthood and lead to actually shortened life expectancies. And I'm sure this pandemic will be included in an adverse childhood experience or toxic stress when you think about it, So you have difficulty just kind of down regulating sometimes, if you're in this constant state of stress at all time, it just wears on the body. It's been shown to contribute to changes in brain architecture and even down to our DNA to a certain extent. So it's pretty significant and pretty severe. And so I'm sure that in the next few years, as we kind of look at this period, we'll probably find out a lot more information in terms of how it's taken a toll on our bodies and our health overall.
And on top of that, Mary Beth, we didn't, this is the first winter really, because last year we kind of started the real intense impact of this was really toward the spring. Now you can't get outside near as much. People who maybe suffer from seasonal, disorders. This is really the worst of it, right?
Absolutely. I think when you think of any group that's already been struggling with either a mood disorder or seasonal depression or compromised healthcare, education issues, there's no margin for error right now. People's bandwidth is so low. So all of those issues, from weather to resources, exacerbates just the difficulty that adolescents and families are facing.
Lynn, I got just about 30 seconds left here. Your best advice for people moving forward now?
Wow. Just to hang in there as much as possible. I think what's said, though, is listening to teenagers, let them validate their concerns and their angst and be as supportive as possible and try to do, things that bring you joy, if at all possible. Put the tablets down, put the computers down, and just take a breath of fresh air.
That's good advice
And
for
breathe.
all of us. Yeah. Mary Beth Garvey, Dr. Lynn Smitherman, thank you both so much. Stay safe and sane, and really appreciate you being with me today.
Thank
you, Devin.
You bet. We'll take a quick break. Back with more. We'll wrap things up on Flashpoint right after this.
Italian design leather is now on sale at Gorman's. Save 40 to 50% off on the sleek contemporary styling of Natuzzi editions. Choose from an endless array of colors and seating designs, now on sale exclusively at Gorman's.
For over 70 years, the legendary Golden Nugget in Las Vegas has been the hottest name in the casino game. So it's no wonder we're the leading online casino, too. And now, our award-winning online experience is live in Michigan at GoldenNuggetCasino.com. Play online slots, your favorite table games, even bet on sports right in the palm of your hand. Download the app or visit GoldenNuggetCasino.com. Sign up now and we'll match your first deposit up to $1,000. Plus, enter to win a car in our Big 3 giveaway. GoldenNuggetCasino.com. Let's play, Michigan.
Hi, I'm David Hall from Hall Financial. Mortgage interest rates are at historic lows, and now is the time to refinance your home loan with Hall Financial. You can cut years off your loan, lower your payment, even consolidate some lingering debts. At Hall Financial, we can help you save thousands of dollars, close your loan in half the time of the competition, and eliminate the need for an appraisal, all while giving you 5-star service. Don't miss out on these historically low rates. Go to davidhallmortgage.com today.
Don't miss truckload pricing on all Stickley at Gorman's. Gorman's has negotiated special factory direct pricing on the complete collection of world-famous Stickley. Stickley has never been more affordable. This weekend at Gorman's.
The Black experience in America, the joy, the pain, the successes.
People have grown up not understanding what was happening at various times in our history.
And understanding our past means a brighter path to our future.
That's the only way we're going to get to the other side of racism in this country.
Local 4 is continuing the conversations that need to be had. History for All.
A Local 4 special event.
Wednesday at 8 p.m. Sponsored by Triumph Church and the Mike Morse Law Firm.
And we are all out of time. Thanks so much for being here. Meet the Press is coming up next. Hope you have a great week, a safe week. We'll see you next time on Flashpoint.